Hello everyone, Xander Road Gaming here, and I'm coming at you with another video. This video is going to be a little bit different than kind of what the channel has been doing so far. I'm going to talk about the event that happened this past weekend in Orlando, some of the topping decks, the percentage of decks topping, and then comparing it to where I was at on my tier list breakdown before the event. Hopefully, everyone got to check that video out. If not, I'll link it in the description below if you care to hear a little bit more topic talking about the decks in detail and how I think they broke down into the tournament. I think a side-by-side comparison kind of first look, I do feel like I had a pretty good grasp on the meta and what decks were going to be topping. Maybe the only thing I missed out on was projecting some decks to do a little bit better than they did, but for most part, some of the decks that I thought would not make it, we definitely hit on. We're going to use the data from eggmanevents.com. Please check out his site, follow his page. I'm using the information that's provided on his site to the community. He does an amazing job. Definitely the best site to go and get your top deck lists and percentages. But we're just going to break this down and look through it. Out of the top 32 leaders, 11 of them were Doflamingo. So that's a lot. That's 30%, 30-ish something percent around the top decks. So I think the assessment making that Doflamingo is absolutely the top deck of this format, hopefully in most people's opinion now, is just proven that it is the best overall deck. Now, it did not win this event, but it did have the most toppings in the top 32. You can take into account that it was probably also the most played deck in the format, but it having the most tops, I think going here from forward will be how I kind of grade what the toppest deck is. In my opinion, is how many decks were in the top 32, and that kind of gives you a little bit more of a fair understanding to what the best deck is, because that means that it has the most placing amongst the best players in the game. 11 in the top 32. So I think without hands down, it is the best deck in the format. It doesn't mean it's unbeatable. It doesn't mean it doesn't have bad matchups. It just means it's the best deck, the most consistent, and the most likely to top with. So us going with that as the best deck in format, I think was a great call. Some of these other decks that I put into the second tier that I said would be top 8 decks, all for the most part were in this. Luffy was in a top at the top 8 down here. It was also, so 1 in the top 8, 2 in the top 8, 2 Luffys there in the top 8. No Shankses in the top 8 though, so very interesting to see Shanks not get into the top 8. I think that Shanks was definitely performing well going into this event, but among players who are going to be at these top tables, Shanks' top end is very easy to see what placing, what his cards are going to be at the end of the game. And I think that good players knowing what Shanks players are going to have to do later in the game made them be able to play around that a lot better. Now, he is in the top 32 with 4 placings, but did not have a top 8 listing, which was a miss on my part by saying that he would be in the top 8, so maybe should have been in this bottom tier down here as the top 16. This is where I said best deck, top 8, top 16s. But one did make it in the top 16, so at least cleaning up on that part. But definitely pulling in, if only one made it into the top 16, but 3 more made it into the top 32, it means it was a solid, consistent deck throughout the weekend, but maybe just missed out on some of those higher top tier matches where these other players had a little bit more with their decks that they could do and could play around what Shanks had to offer. But still, not a bad projection, saying that Shanks would be a top 8, missed out on a little bit, but he made multiple, one in the top 16 and multiples in the top 32, which all these decks would be top 32 here, except that we missed on some. But to go ahead and talk about that, I missed out big time on these two, thinking that Enel and Smoker would have something in the top 32, and they did not. I do think that both these decks have really good matchups in the meta right now, especially into the best deck in format in Doflamingo, so maybe some of these players saw some bad matchups early, or something along those lines, or maybe a lot of people just decided to pick some other decks who normally would pilot these two decks. I know a couple of big Enel players who love Enel and usually on him decided to actually not take him to this tournament. So I guess that says a lot about missing a couple of those big players on him. And Smoker, I'm just a little bit disappointed about. Maybe just Rob Lucci and Teach being better options. People decided to go on that. So neither of these made it into the top 32, which is a little surprising. I thought maybe at least one Enel would make it in, so I was kind of pushing to put Enel into the situation. I really didn't want to. Wanted to put him on the outside looking in, but he was definitely my last choice. But really missed big time on the Smoker. I do think that Smoker is still a really strong deck, but there's just better options to play when you're wanting to play black right now. You have multiple decks that can do what Smoker does, but just a little bit better. Going into the Luffys, 4 of each of the Luffys making it into the top 32. Both really, really strong decks. And then it's just crazy just how consistent that the Structure Deck 13 Luffy, it just keeps performing and topping so well into these tournaments. It's just amazing to see. It really is. A deck that just never going away. Really, really strong. Hit on those pretty good. And then Bonnie having a couple of tops 3 in the top 32. And then we did have one sneak into the top 8 here, which was really cool. It's my favorite deck that I like to play. Probably one of the better decks that I have. I'm glad to see that the Bonnie players showed up, and Bonnie only gets better with upcoming stuff too, or maybe not better, but like different ways to play her. So she's a leader that's not going anywhere. Rob Lucci players showed up, 3 of them in the top 32. You see here we have the 4th place Rob Lucci, just really making it up there, really strong. Has to be an amazing player to Andy Nguyen. Congrats to him for sure, because I did not think that Rob Lucci would get a top 4 finish. I know I said he would get a top 8, at least one in there. Top 4, I think, is really pushing it for Rob Lucci, and it shows just how strong this deck is. People were kind of falling off of him a little bit too, being switched up between the Luffys and the Blackbeard, but really, really awesome to see that 2 of them made it into the top 8, not just one. Awesome for these players that did that. And the last one to touch up on, who are we missing here? We did the Luffys, the Lucci, Jewelry Bonnie. Yeah, that's them. So, feel pretty solid about the grasp I had on the meta. It was really exciting get to watch some of these games on the stream. I do wish they would have streamed more games for us. And this gives us kind of an idea to what we can look forward to in some of the next events coming up. I'm not sure which big ones are coming up. I will cover them when they come up for you guys. But here is what I said would be on there. Got pretty close, and this is what ended up happening. I feel pretty solid on it. I'm just going to get more and more involved into this game, learn more about it, try to become a better player myself, so that way I can try to give everyone better information, better insight on what to do in the future for these events. I do still feel pretty solid about some of the advice I gave you. Like I said, I'll link this video talking about these decks and how I think they feel in the messages, in the meta coming forward. But please like this video, share. I'm trying to grow this page. I love making content. I love One Piece. It's such a fun game, and I look forward to seeing you guys. I appreciate it. Thanks. Peace.